arrived sooner than planned, gripping the cake box like it held something fragile beyond dessert. Almond with dark chocolate, her favorite since she was a little girl. I could still picture her standing on a stool, frosting smeared on her cheek, laughing as if joy were endless and unconditional. That memory followed me as I rang the doorbell. When the door opened, her face erased it instantly. No smile. No surprise. Just a tight expression that said I was an inconvenience. "Oh. You're early," she said, stepping aside without really welcoming me in. At 71 years old, I had learned how to endure many things. But standing there, I felt unexpectedly small. The house was breathtaking, 3 stories of glass, marble floors that echoed underfoot, and wide windows framing the ocean like artwork. A home I had helped make possible years ago, believing that love meant giving until it hurt. I straightened the dress I'd chosen carefully for today, holding the cake in one hand and a small silver box in the other. Inside the box was a pearl necklace. It had belonged to my mother. Then to me. I wanted my daughter to have it now, a quiet reminder that she came from something deeper than luxury. There was no hug. No greeting. "Just put it in the kitchen," she called over her shoulder. "I'm finishing a call." I stood there for a moment before moving, aware of how silent the house felt around me. The kitchen looked like something from a magazine, imported stone, spotless counters, appliances worth more than my old car. I placed the cake down gently. Through the glass doors, I saw my grandchildren laughing in the pool, guided by an instructor. They didn't look my way once. I waited. When she returned, she looked flawless. Perfect hair, polished nails, effortless confidence. A life supported by loans I'd signed, checks I'd written, sacrifices I'd never spoken about. She opened the fridge, took a drink, and spoke without turning to me. "So, are you heading back today, or staying longer?" My chest tightened. "I thought we could have dinner together. It's been a while." She exhaled, clearly irritated. "I already have plans. Just the 2 of us." I nodded, pretending I understood. Then she faced me, arms folded. I knew that posture well. I'd seen it since she was young, always before words that hurt. "Mom," she said evenly, "we need to talk." And in that moment, I understood this birthday had never been meant to celebrate me. I didn't yet know that what she was about to say would change the way I saw my daughter and my own sacrifices, forever. She didn't sit down. Neither did I. She stayed standing near the counter, arms still crossed, eyes focused somewhere past my shoulder, like this conversation was something she wanted finished quickly. "I've been thinking about this for a while," she began. "And I need you to hear me without getting emotional." That sentence alone told me everything. When someone asks you not to feel, it usually means they're about to say something that will hurt. "I'll try," I said quietly. She nodded once, as if checking off a box. "I think it's best if you stop coming by unannounced." I blinked. "I didn't think, it's not just today," she interrupted. "It's in general. The kids have routines. We have schedules. It's disruptive." Disruptive. The word echoed in my chest. I thought of all the years I'd rearranged my own life around her needs, babysitting on short notice, emergency school pickups, late-night calls when her world felt like it was falling apart. "I only wanted to spend time with you," I said. "With the children." She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Mom, they're not used to you. You haven't really been present." The room felt suddenly too large. "I came whenever you asked," I said softly. "Sometimes when you didn't." She shifted her weight, clearly uncomfortable. "But that's part of the problem. You show up with expectations. Gifts. Emotional weight." I glanced at the silver box still in my hand. My fingers tightened around it. "I just wanted to give you something meaningful," I said. It was my mother's. She finally looked at the box, and then away. "That's exactly what I mean. You attach feelings to things. It makes everything heavier." Heavier. I thought of the loans I'd co-signed without hesitation. The money I'd lent and never asked back for. The times I'd gone without so she wouldn't have to. "I didn't realize love was a burden," I said, my voice barely steady. She didn't respond right away. When she did, her tone was careful, rehearsed. "I think we need boundaries," she said. "Clear ones. Maybe visits only when planned. And maybe less involvement overall." Less involvement? From a mother. I nodded slowly, because I didn't trust myself to speak. She relaxed, as if relieved. I'm glad you understand. Understand. That word hurt more than the rest. I looked around the kitchen once more, the spotless surfaces, the expensive silence, the life I'd helped build but no longer fit into. I placed the silver box beside the cake. I should go, I said. She hesitated. Just for a second. You don't have to rush. But I already knew I did. As I walked toward the door, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. This wasn't about boundaries. It was about erasing me gently, politely, so no one would feel guilty. I thought that was the worst thing she could say. Until I reached the door and heard her final request. My hand was already on the door handle when she spoke again. Oh, and Mom? I paused. There's one more thing. I turned slowly, bracing myself. She didn't look uncomfortable this time. She looked decided. I think it would be best if you didn't give the kids gifts anymore, she said. At least not without checking with me first. The words didn't land all at once. They settled, piece by piece, like dust after something shatters. I'm sorry? I asked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. They get overwhelmed, she continued, her tone measured, almost gentle. Too many things. Too many emotions attached. It confuses them. I glanced through the glass doors again. My grandchildren were still in the pool laughing, splashing, completely unaware that their grandmother was being slowly edited out of their lives. I give them books, I said quietly. Sweaters. Things to remember me by. She tilted her head. That's exactly the issue. We don't want them forming attachments that make transitions harder later. Transitions. I felt something cold spread through my chest. What transitions? She hesitated. Just long enough to make my stomach tighten. We're considering moving, she said. Possibly abroad. Nothing final yet, but still. It's better if expectations are managed early. Abroad. No visits. No holidays. No spontaneous afternoons. Just distance, wrapped in practicality. I wasn't aware, I said. We didn't want to worry you, she replied quickly. And honestly, this is another reason boundaries are important. I nodded slowly, because nodding was easier than crying. I only wanted to be part of their lives, I said. In whatever way you allowed. She sighed, clearly frustrated now. Mom, you're making this about you. I looked at her then. Really looked. At the woman she'd become. So polished. So controlled. So careful with everything except my heart. I'm their grandmother, I said. How could this not be about me at least a little? She didn't answer. The silence stretched. Heavy. Final. I picked up my purse, my movements stiff, unfamiliar. I'll respect your wishes, I said. I always have. She relaxed again, like someone who'd won a quiet argument. Thank you. That means a lot. It didn't feel like it. As I stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set, washing the sky in soft gold. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the salty air, wondering how love could exist so deeply in one direction and feel so conditional in the other. Behind me, the door closed gently. Not slammed. Just closed. I thought the silence that followed would be the hardest part, but that night, alone in my car, I discovered the truth she had never planned to tell me. The drive home felt longer than usual. I sat in my car for several minutes before turning the key, watching the sun disappear behind the water. The radio stayed off. Silence felt more honest. My hands trembled slightly as I rested them on the steering wheel, the weight of the evening finally settling into my bones. I replayed every word in my mind, not to argue with them, but to understand them. Boundaries. Expectations. Transitions. Words that sounded reasonable until you realized what they were being used to cut away. When I reached my apartment, the lights were still off. I hadn't expected to be gone long. I set my purse down carefully, as if noise might break something fragile inside me, and sank into the chair by the window. On the small table beside it sat a framed photo. My daughter at 6 years old, missing 2 teeth, arms wrapped around my neck at the county fair. I remembered that day clearly. She'd been afraid of the Ferris wheel until I promised I wouldn't let go. And I never had. I rose slowly and went to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator out of habit. Leftovers. Milk. Nothing special. I smiled faintly at the irony. I had brought celebration with me earlier: cake, pearls, history, and returned to quiet. My phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart lifted. A message from her, maybe. An apology. A second thought. Instead, it was a notification from my bank. Payment reminder: loan installment due tomorrow. I stared at the screen, confused. I'd paid everything off years ago, or so I thought. I opened the details. The loan wasn't new. It was one I'd co-signed for her when they bought the house. Adjustable rate. Recently increased. The amount listed was higher than before. Much higher. My chest tightened. I scrolled further and saw the note I'd missed months ago. Primary borrower updated contact information. My email was no longer listed. Neither was my phone number. I sat back down slowly. They had changed the details without telling me. Quietly. Efficiently. Just like the boundaries. A memory surfaced, her voice, years earlier, reassuring me. "Don't worry, Mom. This is temporary. We've got it under control." Had they? I checked my account balance. Then again. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. If this continued, I wouldn't just be emotionally distant from my daughter. I'd be financially tied to a life that no longer had room for me. I set the phone down and folded my hands in my lap. For the first time that day, I felt something sharper than sadness. Clarity. This wasn't just about visits or gifts. It was about control and silence, and the quiet assumption that I would keep giving without asking questions. And for the first time in my life, I wondered what would happen if I didn't. The next morning, I made a decision I had avoided for years, and it would force my daughter to finally see me not as a convenience, but as a person. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, the sadness had settled into something steadier. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just resolve. The kind that comes when you finally stop hoping someone will change and start deciding what you will. I made coffee and sat at the small kitchen table, the same one I'd used for decades. Bills neatly stacked. Pen aligned. I'd always been careful with money, not because I had much, but because I understood what it meant to owe. I opened my laptop and logged into the bank portal again, slower this time. I read every line. Every clause. Every date. The loan was still active, still tied to my name, still very much my responsibility if something went wrong. And something was wrong. I called the bank. After a short wait, a polite woman answered. I explained who I was, gave my information, and asked a simple question. Am I still legally responsible for this loan? There was a pause while she checked. Yes, she said. You're listed as a cosigner. Full liability. I thanked her and hung up, my hands steady despite the weight of the answer. Then I made another call, this one harder. My daughter answered on the third ring. Her voice was bright, casual, as if the night before hadn't happened at all. Hi, Mom. I received a notice from the bank, I said. No accusation. Just fact. About the house loan. Silence. They raised the rate, I continued. And my contact information was removed. Another pause, longer this time. We meant to mention it, she said finally. It's being handled. I'm sure you believe that, I replied. But I wasn't asked. And I should have been. She exhaled sharply. Mom, we didn't want to stress you. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. You don't get to decide that for me. Her tone cooled. What are you saying? I'm saying I need transparency, I said. And I need to protect myself. Are you threatening us? She asked, disbelief creeping in. No, I said calmly. I'm setting boundaries. The word landed between us, familiar, uncomfortable. I've spent years assuming everything would be fine, I continued. That my role was to support quietly. But I can't do that anymore. She didn't respond right away. I need us to meet, I said. All of us. And I need the loan addressed properly. Her voice tightened. This feels sudden. It isn't, I said gently. It's just the first time I've spoken it out loud. When the call ended, I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't asking to be included. I was insisting on being respected. I thought that conversation would bring clarity, but 2 days later, I received a message that proved my daughter had never expected me to push back at all. The message came 2 days later, Just afternoon. It wasn't from my daughter. It was from her husband. We need to talk. Urgently. I read it twice before setting the phone down. That alone told me everything. If this were nothing, if things were truly handled, he wouldn't be reaching out now. We met that evening at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. Neutral ground. When I arrived, he was already there, fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. He stood when he saw me. Polite. Careful. "Thank you for coming," he said. I nodded and sat across from him. "You said it was urgent." He hesitated, choosing his words the way people do when they're about to reveal something they hoped would stay hidden. "The loan situation is more complicated than we expected," he admitted. "The rate increase caught us off guard." I didn't respond. I simply waited. He continued, "We're restructuring some things. It just takes time." "How much time?" I asked. He looked away. "That depends." "On what?" He didn't say. "I need to be honest with you," he added quickly. "Your daughter is upset. She feels like this conversation should have stayed private." I folded my hands in my lap. "Private for whom?" He sighed. "She feels blindsided." "So did I said calmly. That landed harder than I expected. He nodded slowly, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "There's pressure," he said. "More than you realize." "I realize more than you think," I replied. "I just haven't complained about it." Silence settled between us. Heavy, but not hostile. Finally, he spoke again. "If you were willing to cover the increase for now, it would help. Just until things stabilize." There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. A request. I looked at him, really looked. A man accustomed to solutions appearing when needed. A man who had never imagined the answer might be no. "I won't," I said gently. His eyes widened. "You won't help?" "I won't enable," I corrected. "There's a difference." He leaned back, stunned. "This puts us in a difficult position." "I know," I said. "That position has been mine for years." He didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply nodded, as though a door had quietly closed in his mind. When we parted, he thanked me again, out of habit, not understanding. On the drive home, I realized something important. They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were angry because I was no longer predictable. I thought that realization would bring peace, but the next morning, my daughter showed up at my door, and she was not there to reconcile. She arrived the next morning without warning. I was halfway through my tea when the knock came, sharp, impatient, nothing like the polite taps I remembered from years ago. I didn't rush. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, she stood there with her arms crossed, sunglasses still on, keys clenched in her hand like armor. "We need to talk," she said. Not a request. A demand. I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't sit. She paced the small living room, taking in the modest furniture, the quiet walls, the life I'd built long before hers grew so large it no longer had space for me. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she said finally. "This is affecting us." "I understand exactly why," I replied. "That's why I'm doing it." She turned sharply. "You're punishing us." I shook my head. "No. I'm protecting myself." She laughed, short, disbelieving. "For what?" "We've never asked you for anything you couldn't handle." The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they erased decades so casually. "I co-signed a loan that could outlive me," I said. "That's not nothing." She waved a hand. "That's how families help each other." "Yes," I agreed. "But help isn't the same as obligation." She stopped pacing then, finally facing me fully. "So what, you're just going to pull support now? After everything?" "After everything. I supported you when it mattered most," I said evenly. "Now I'm asking for honesty and respect. That's not pulling away. That's standing up." Her voice rose. "Do you have any idea what this could do to us?" I held her gaze. "Do you have any idea what it's already done to me?" Silence stretched between us. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. "You're being selfish," she said quietly. I felt something loosen inside my chest. "No," I replied just as quietly. "I'm being careful. There's a difference." She looked around again, as if seeing my world for the first time, not as something she could rely on, but as something separate. "So what do you want?" she asked. "An apology? Gratitude?" "I want clarity," I said. "And a plan that doesn't assume I'll fix things if they fall apart." She exhaled sharply, frustrated. "You're changing." "Yes," I said. "Because I had to." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she reached for the door. "This isn't over," she said. I nodded. "No. But it is different now." When the door closed behind her, the room felt quieter, but steadier. Like something fragile had finally been set down instead of carried. I thought that confrontation was the hardest part, but later that week, a letter arrived that forced me to decide how far I was willing to go to protect myself. The letter arrived 3 days later. It wasn't dramatic. No bold lettering. No warning stamp. Just a plain envelope with the bank's return address printed neatly in the corner. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the table and made myself lunch first. Soup. Toast. Simple things. I'd learned over the years that difficult moments deserved steadiness, not panic. When I finally slid my finger under the seal, my hands didn't shake. The letter confirmed what I already suspected. Due to recent changes in the loan terms, the bank required updated consent from all responsible parties. Until that happened, certain protections would be suspended. Missed payments would affect every name on the loan equally, including mine. At the bottom of the page was a suggestion, written politely, professionally. Consider independent legal counsel. I folded the letter and sat quietly for a long time. For years, I had treated this loan like a favor. Something temporary. Something flexible. But the paper in my hands made it clear, this wasn't kindness anymore. It was risk. That afternoon, I made an appointment with a lawyer. He was calm, thorough, and respectful, everything the situation required. He explained my options carefully. I could remain a cosigner and accept the uncertainty. I could request formal refinancing that removed my name. Or, if cooperation failed, I could legally protect myself in ways I had hoped never to consider. "What would you recommend?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. "What would give you peace?" The word lingered. Peace. Not control. Not revenge. Not even fairness. Peace. That evening, I called my daughter again. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail, short, steady. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I said. "I need us to refinance the loan and remove my name. This isn't a punishment. It's a necessity. Please call me." She didn't respond that night. Or the next day. The silence was loud, but familiar. I had lived inside it for years, mistaking it for patience. On the third day, I received a text. "This feels extreme." I read it once. Then again. "So did being shut out of your life," I said aloud to the empty room, but I didn't type that. Instead, I replied simply, "So did being excluded from decisions that still affect me." I placed the phone face down and looked around my apartment. Small. Quiet. Mine. For the first time, I understood something clearly. Love that costs you your safety is not love, it's obligation. And I was done confusing the two. I thought setting that boundary would end the conflict, but the choice my daughter made next would decide whether our relationship survived at all. She called me the following evening. Not a text. Not a message sent through someone else. A call. I let it ring twice before answering, not to make a point, but to steady myself. "Hi," she said. Her voice sounded different. Less sharp. Tired. "Hi," I replied. We didn't rush into anything. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. In the past, I would have filled that silence, smoothed it over, made things easier for her. This time, I let it exist. "I talked to the bank," she said finally. "And to our advisor." I waited. "They said refinancing without you is possible," she continued. "It won't be easy. But it's doable." I exhaled slowly. "I'm glad." She hesitated. "I didn't realize how exposed you were." "I should have." "Yes," I said gently. "You should have." There was no accusation in my voice, just truth. "I think," she said carefully, "I got used to you always saying yes." The words landed quietly, but they landed honestly. "I know," I replied. "So did I." Another pause. I don't want to lose you, she said. I closed my eyes for a moment. I don't want to lose myself. That seemed to settle something between us. We talked longer after that, not about money, not about blame, but about what our relationship had slowly become. How convenience had replaced care. How silence had been mistaken for strength. How love, when unbalanced, can turn into expectation. Nothing was magically fixed by the end of the call. But something important shifted. A week later, the paperwork began. Slowly. Properly. With my name removed and my future no longer tied to decisions I couldn't see. She didn't ask for money again. And I didn't offer. Instead, she asked if I'd like to have dinner, at my place. Just soup and bread. No schedules. No pressure. When she arrived, she hugged me. Not out of habit. Out of choice. We are not perfect now. We are careful. Learning. Rebuilding something more honest than before. I still love my daughter deeply. But I love myself, too. And I finally understand this: real love doesn't require you to disappear to keep the peace. Sometimes, the bravest thing a mother can do is stay. If you've ever felt guilty for protecting yourself, remember this: boundaries don't end love. They show you where it can truly begin.